Hello and welcome to another Let's Interview, and today my guest is Zenith Will Review.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And let me just adjust the mic and yes, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Zenith. I've been doing videos on the internet for about 5 years now, and in that time I've done quite a lot of stuff. I really haven't really didn't get my start until like the second 2.5 years into it, but I do a lot of different projects. Lately, it's been mostly the history of One Piece, where I talk about, go in depth and analyze each arc of One Piece. I also have the Final Fantasy retrospective, which is so far only covering Final Fantasy 1, but very, very in-depth look at these video games. And I'm also doing a series called Retrospectives, where I take a look back at some of the games from my past. I've done Sonic the Hedgehog, which was a lot of fun. I took a look at some other games as well, the Saboteur, and I have a lot of fun things coming up in the future. So.
Ooh, I can't wait. Hey, and I didn't even need to ask the question, like, what got your start?
Well, honestly, pretty much like a lot of video critics on the internet, I was a fan of that guy with the glasses.com. I was working at a summer camp at the time, and my friend said, "Hey, check this out. This is really cool." So, he showed me one of the videos, and I was in college at the time, so I just, started marathoning, and that was the time when you could actually watch through a lot of these video producers' content. I started seeing like people like Linkara and Angry Joe and people who were really just there to entertain. As I started making my own content, you start to realize, okay, there's so little that I know about this, and you start to kind of teach yourself as you go. But as I progressed with it, I realized that I didn't really have a firm direction of what I wanted to do, so I just did something I was passionate about, and people really liked it, and I just kept going with it. And I realized from there what my strengths were as a reviewer.
Yeah, and I get that story a lot. People saw that guy with the glasses, they wanted to do what they did, and usually they realize, okay, they make this stuff look easy.
Yeah, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. One thing, starting out, I had a cameraman when I first began. Nowadays, I do not do that. For one, it costs a lot of money just to buy my own camera. Once I found out my cameraman was stealing for me, and I let him go because I'm not going to stand for that. But
fair enough.
Yeah, so after a while, like, being your own cameraman is not as easy as it sounds. And so I just kind of stuck to audio-based production, and I found that to be a lot easier and a lot more focused on what I wanted to be doing. But even that is very time-consuming, and it's more involved than you really think it is at first.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they went on YouTube, they're like, oh, this will be easy. I don't have to pay a cent. I'll get money. Nope!
Yeah, and I haven't seen a cent from YouTube yet, but I'm not really in it for the money at all.
You're in it for
it's something I really like doing.
Yeah, and it's clear that you put a lot of passion into the stuff, and that's what I like to see. Yeah. So why the history of One Piece, though? Like, that's probably what's made you pretty famous, at least as far as a lot of your subscribers go. But hello? I do believe we have reached some technical difficulties. Everything is frozen. We'll be right back.
And we're
okay.
back?
We're back. We're back.
Okay.
Yeah, that was weird. What? Is there a time warping devil fruit around here? Because if so, actually, that'd be a pretty interesting fight. I control the power of time with the time fruit. That or the clock fruit.
That would be a
But you
very
turn yourself into a
overpowered fruit.
clock. Yeah, how many fruits do you think there be that just do sort of esoteric stuff? Like, I can turn into a
that's the
clock!
That's the beauty of One Piece filler, though. You can have any devil fruit you can imagine, because it doesn't even have to be canon. It could be a one-shot. It could be something completely stupid, and they'll just... You can make it up.
I have the crossover fruit. It lets me create crossovers. Here, have Naruto. Ah, it burns. Although,
So, what were you asking before we...
why history of One Piece? Like, what made you go, you know what, I want to do this?
Well, I was watching Linkara's History of Power Rangers for the longest time, and I was really big into it, and I thought, hey, what is something that I'm passionate about that I could do as well? And I thought, I'm really, really big into One Piece. I know a lot about it. When I was in college, I marathoned the entire, I think it was 600 chapters or so at the time, in a week, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought, I know a lot about this. I can probably put a lot of effort into this. But I wanted it to be clear when I started that while it was inspired by Linkara, I didn't want it to be exactly the same thing. That a lot of people tended to not get that at first. They wanted it to be more, oh well, he does this, why don't you do this? And I'm just, it's its own thing. I wanted it to be more analytic, more in depth, and covering an anime is a little bit different than covering an entire season of Power Rangers, because anime
doesn't
can
have seasons, because anime is
yeah.
constantly being made. I mean, that's why a lot of people, why there's the whole DBZ joke of how many DBZ characters it take to screw in a light bulb. One, but he takes 5 episodes. It's always being drawn, and they have to slow down so the manga can go ahead.
And not only that, but the arcs are always so very differently structured. You can have an entire episode contain a season worth of material, and then you can have arcs lasting for years, such as Water 7 is one of the longest arcs in the history of One Piece, and that goes on for a long time, and that's just considered one arc. And so while, getting started, a lot of people were criticizing me for just sticking with one episode and making 4 episodes about it. I stuck with that formula because I felt it made sense in the context of, this is an anime. If you're going to talk about it in that same vein, you have to go in depth enough with the same vigor that you're going to do every single arc. Because if you half-ass the first episode, when I get to Crocodile, like, I'm not just going to go through it in one single episode. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of effort just to get it the way I want it. I don't want to produce something half-assed, really.
Yeah, I mean, because you also got to take into account that, like, you have a couple episodes recapping, then you got to analyze the characters, their character evolution, the villain, and his motivation, his inspirations. I mean, and you're not just talking about stuff within the thing. You're talking about, like, what inspired the characters, what made them, which I actually like. I mean, some of the stuff I knew, like, you have yet to mention that Zolo, or Zoro, potato patata, LNR is the same in Japan, because of the whole liquid consonant thing, was actually originally meant to be a member of Buggy or Boogie the Clown's crew.
That's actually going to be the next episode.
Yay!
The fun thing about doing the overviews is that I get to really do a lot of research on these characters, and every single time I approach it, I found that recap is stuff within the confines of the episode itself. Within the overview, I do a lot of research, and I take a lot of time to reread the chapters of the manga, to look into the things behind the scenes. There's some things that you really learn when you look at it, especially some of the characters are based on famous pirates. Some of the behind-the-scenes reasons why they made some of the edits are really funny. For example, they made the change to Captain Morgan's design because the editor thought it was too ugly originally, and it was for good reason because he basically had like a wig on his head.
I know, the hair. And I get the logic behind why you would want the father to look like Helpo Ammo, but no, that's not intimidating. I don't care if he has an accent. With a hair like that, you lose all credibility as a villain.
And I'm kind of surprised they didn't do the same thing with Buggy, because in that same vein, Buggy has the potential to be as deep as Captain Morgan was. Now, we didn't see Captain Morgan that often. He's going to have a bearing on the Captain Kuro arc as well. But in all honesty, Captain Buggy as a villain just really does not inspire much confidence when I think Oda just wanted him to be a one-off joke.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, it's a killer clown! Which, thematically, it's pretty entertaining, the whole circus-themed pirate crew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but he does it a little bit better later on.
I'm with you with a lot of the stuff, like, his first mate's a joke, his second mate is more intimidating, but then again, he becomes a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Though I do like the whole conniving, trickster swordsman, He's not honorable, he's just an asshole.
I'm so torn on Kabaji, because when I first saw this arc, I loved him. I loved him a lot. But when you take a look at his character, he doesn't really have anything going for him. He looks cool, he sounds cool, but if you break it down, all he does is just kick somebody when he's down. And yes, that's the mark of a villain, but
what else?
Maybe not
he used the first mate's beloved pet as a shield, which is pretty low. That is pretty damn low.
I actually like the cut to that. He's just like, hey, I can hold a lion with one hand.
Yeah. Why doesn't he ever show more of that strength? And he's just a tiny guy too. Luffy, you could just throw it. It's a mark of a shonen anime. Small guys are tough.
I don't know. Like, I feel like he could have the strength to wield his sword much better. And if someone other than Zoro was his opponent, maybe. But the rule is Zoro has to defeat any swordsman aside from Mihawk.
It's the rule.
Yeah, so
I mean, Luffy fights the main guy, Zolo fights the first mate and or swordsman, Usopp will trick the opponent, and so on and so forth. We know how things work, but it's a formula that actually is entertaining.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, the formula really hadn't been established at this point in the manga or the anime. Oda was just kind of feeling around. He had a lot of really great ideas, but he didn't know how to quite utilize them yet. And while I think Romance Dawn is a perfect example of how he's able to utilize his ideas, that was his start. He didn't know where he was going from there. And I think the Kuro and Barati arc was him finding his formula, finding out what worked. And then when he found the Arlong arc, it just putting everything that he had found worked into place at the same time.
That and introducing one of the coolest characters, our favorite Octopus Man. Though I find it very weird how later on he makes a takoyaki stand. But it's octopus, so...
It's a Japanese pun. I
know.
thought it was really funny.
Cannibalism if he eats it?
Well, he's sentient. He's conscious and he can talk. I don't know about the octopuses under the sea, but then again, that raises.
How does that work? Like, if you're a fish man and you eat a fish that you're based off, is that cannibalism? It's like one of those things that I don't think the characters realized. Heck, I bet if one of them even mentioned it, he's just like, like he just suddenly realized.
Yeah, I think
they're
Oda,
still good. Ow.
It's one of those same questions along the line of, like, can you hold the people accountable for the Death Star, like just working on it? It's one of those questions where the creators didn't even care.
It's not
just
really a
joke.
question that needs to be answered, though it's good for jokes. So, out of, like, every arc, how about this? How about we cut to everything before the time skip? What would you say is your favorite arcs?
Before the time skip, I'm going to be... Honestly, it's not going to surprise you. My favorite was Water 7 / Enies Lobby, which, I mean, it's two separate arcs, but one is the build-up and one is the payoff. You really have to put these two together. I know some people find Water 7 and Enies Lobby a little bit boring because it's all build-up and then all payoff, but I think it's one massive arc.
And there's a lot going on in between. There's intrigue, there's plenty of moments, like the fight between Luffy and Usopp, and Usopp actually showing that he can be a badass when he brings the main character, Luffy, to a standstill in an actual fight. This wasn't
then
Luffy
again,
going easy.
Luffy said that he wasn't going easy, and he really did give Usopp that respect. And Usopp showed that he had the strategy and with the dials, the strength to take on Luffy. I mean, he knows Luffy's every attack. He knows how he operates. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah,
but
there's character development, there's mystery and intrigue about who are these mysterious masked people and why is Robin interacting with them. There's plenty of comedy involving Frankie as well as the workers.
Sogeking Shimate.
Of course, we all love the Sniper King.
But I think what really works about it is the change in the dynamic. Nowhere before had the group been at such dissonance. They were falling apart at the seams. Because up until this point, maybe some characters moved around a little bit, came back, but there was never a point where two characters left and it was almost believed that they were going to be gone forever.
Yeah,
and this was
Robin,
them.
We didn't know exactly all her loyalties. I mean, she was working with Crocodile. For all we know, it was a build-up like, oh, she's going to backstab. But Usopp, we didn't expect that. We didn't expect him to be so frustrated and actually do that.
We didn't expect Frankie, because out of all the characters in this arc that could have joined the crew, I never expect. I thought Iceberg was going to join.
That would have been cool.
That
along with his little mouse Tyrannosaurus.
But I think Frankie was weird enough and different enough, and he showed that he was the one who went along with them in the fight and showed that, I can redeem myself for the past. And when you finally learn the backstory of why he's doing it, it really cements the fact that Frankie is a brilliant character, and the fact that they turned someone who you initially despised because of what he did to Usopp and how Usopp was brought to tears losing all that money and everything. He did his best and he couldn't stop him. And then you learned why Frankie did it, and you're just like,
oh. So basically, it wasn't a personal attack. It was just probably a normal thing. And I mean, they were pirates. In the grand scheme of things,
it's what we do. I love everything that arc stands for. I love the emotions, the burning of the Going Merry, the action, the discovery of the gear. There's so much going on, and yet it's so concise and it's properly paced, which is something that Oda has a problem with. If there's something that I will criticize, and I don't criticize One Piece too harshly, some people do more than I do, but like Sky Island, one of the worst paced arcs of One Piece. I think it's underrated. I think people don't realize the importance of it, but at the same time, yes, it is long as hell. Yeah. And it doesn't need to be that long.
Yeah, even in the manga, it's pretty poorly paced. Mm-hmm. Although it does have a pretty good fight, and that reaction of our Thunder God realizing that he cannot shock Luffy, that sort of makes up for everything. Just the...
Eneru as a villain and as an opponent is perfect, I think, because one, he's not just relying on his power. The Loga users in One Piece tend to just be like, oh, you can't touch me, so blah blah blah. But Luffy actually is able to punch him, and he still remains a threat throughout the entire fight.
He was surprised the first time, but I think anyone would. You just mix up the strategy.
I think the biggest problem in that arc was the henchmen. Only half of his henchmen were good. Yeah. The fat one and the stupid one, I'm just like, what use are you in this entire story?
At least the stupid one had a couple of good jokes. It was funny, especially in the ending, how he does himself in. But the fat one, yeah.
We could have used without it. The only reason for the fat one was to introduce Montera, which was later reintroduced as Hockey.
Which, by the way, was a pretty good setup for Hockey.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, Skypiea has its uses beyond that, like the slab that pointed to the hidden history or the weapon. We don't know too much about the dials. There's a lot of stuff that was important in this arc. It was just, there's too much fluff. I mean, I loved the history with the King of Liars, Nolan. I loved the Shandians. I really enjoyed the Sky Knight, and I thought they were cool concepts. But I think, when you get to the halfway point, which is right where the English anime stopped and where I started reading the manga, was like, that's an exhausting moment. And it's no wonder that it went off the air. I mean, 4Kids did a lot to destroy it, but at the same time, like, that was an exhausting arc.
Yeah.
It's going to be a chore for me to get through that, even though I'm one of the people who defend it. I like it.
It has its moments, like we say, but I mean, we love it, the One Piece, but there are plenty of moments to criticize and such. And while we may have differing opinions, like me, I like Buggy the Clown mostly because I love the whole circus apparatus, but I agree with you that he could be a much better villain.
I like his later appearances.
Yeah, he gets better later on. He's far more entertaining. That and his ability becomes very useful.
His ability, I think, is wasted on him in so much. Like, I wish he didn't have an ability, to the point where he could just be a joke character, kind of like Panda Man. Panda Man is awesome, and he's a funny character.
Man,
he's only in a
awesome
few panels.
He was part of the crew. Panda Man.
He technically could be. I mean, if you look at the original opening, Sanji kicks Panda Man in the face.
I know.
Like, in that opening. And I'm just like, wait a second, that's Panda Man. But it just, there's a lot of good joke characters. I just feel like Boogie, he wasn't sure. He could have been a great joke character. He could have been a great villain. But instead, we kind of got this wishy-washy in the middle.
Love from B.
Mm-hmm. Then again, honestly, Buggy arc is far from the worst arc. Unfortunately, the worst canon arc in One Piece is kind of a filler arc. The one that I keep mentioning every single time, I'm like, we'll get to it.
What is it?
Apis.
Barney?
Apis. The arc, it's in the anime. It's in between, right after Captain Smoker chases them away. They're going on their way to the Grand Line. In the anime, there's a filler arc called the Apis arc. They meet this little called Apis who can speak to dragons. It's this weird devil fruit. It's one of the most annoying arcs in existence because it's a filler arc and it goes nowhere for almost, like, I think 20 episodes or more. Like, it just does nothing for all this time.
I mean, most filler arcs in One Piece are decent. But I guess you're right. I mean, that one.
But the cardinal sin is that it's not a filler arc in one sense. 2 of the episodes are necessary to learn about major plot points for the Grand Line. For example, the Seki Seki stone and, what happens when you try to cross the open ocean. and the riding up the mountain into the Grand Line. Like, that's technically part of that arc.
Oh, yeah. So if I want to see the Going Merry on top of a giant Neptunian, I gotta watch that arc.
Yeah, and I mean, you can kind of just like watch that episode and then skip forward, but you'll be a little bit lost, and you shouldn't. There's also the part that, you know how Zoro had this entire thing in the Crocodile arc where he learns how to cut through metal, and that's a big plot point?
Yeah.
In the filler arc, he cuts through metal like nothing, and they never reference it ever again.
Well, you could say it's a filler arc and there was miscommunication, but yeah, that's pretty dumb.
And Oda saw that, and he's like, okay, no. Filler arcs are going to be different from now on, and he took a much bigger control after that point. Not to mention, the villain of the arc is this really, really fat, rotund person who never does his own dirty work. And his henchman is a guy who's like a weasel. His like design is like really, really thin, and he has like this wind fruit ability, but he keeps showing up and he never does anything. And it takes like 5 encounters with this guy just to beat him, and it goes nowhere. So this is one of the things that I keep as a running joke in my episodes. Every single like end, I'm like, anytime like something gets bad, I'm just like, nope, Opus is coming up. We'll get to you.
This isn't as bad as that. And at least we'll get to that one filler arc with the Foxy Pirates, which is, well, a lot longer than the manga, but still entertaining.
That's technically not a filler arc.
Well,
that is
yes,
canon.
But a lot of the stuff they added to it, like more events, is filler. But
there
works.
There are 3 episodes that are filler, yes.
But it works, especially since I actually wanted to see, in the manga, I actually wanted to see more events, because I just gotta know, what crazy games could pirates come up with? And I love the fact that in Pirate Dodgeball, they have a rule book for every contingency, including swallowing the ball. I want to know what happened with that. Was it an accident? Did somebody throw a ball and it went into their mouth? Or did someone intentionally do it? I want to know. I want to know that story.
I just love Afro Luffy. Afro Luffy is one of the coolest things ever. Like, they need to bring him back. And I mean, there's a sequel to that filler, but the Afro Luffy hasn't been brought up at all in the main story.
We need more Afro Luffy. Afro Luffy Gear 3.
That'll be the day.
How about this? Just Afro Crew. Everybody gets an afro.
I think a lot of them would. Come to think of it, a lot of them would, but then I don't know if Zoro would. The only person who would
be Nami, because she has to be the straight man. She's just like, what are you guys doing? And
if they pay her enough,
Yeah, I just want to see Afro Robin. Afro
Robin
Chopper.
would do it too. Robin just goes along with everything just because she doesn't. She's never had friends, so she just kind of goes along.
It's so nice to see her when she does like really crazy. Although that one time when they did the whole robot thing and she refused to do it, I was disappointed. Along with the giant
that's the
zombie.
Coolest thing ever. My eyes had the Sugoi face, like,
oh,
that was cool.
Like, really? I mean, even the zombie was disappointed. He just like, oh, come on! Everybody wanted it. Oda knew everybody wanted to see that. Oda, he's a troll.
One of these days,
definitely. One of these days, we're probably going to find it at the Thousand Sun. He can also turn into a giant robot. Or fuse with other ships to become robots. Which would be an awesome finale. Fighting the entire Navy Armada with a giant pirate mech. And you have all these allies and former enemies all driving it. That would not be jumping the shark. That would be nuking the shark and jumping out of the explosion.
It would make sense, though, because one of the main things about One Piece is that we all understand that, you have to get to the island to Raftel to get the One Piece. But what happens when they try to get home? I think a lot of the end part of One Piece will be the
Where are they
Navy
now?
trying to stop them from getting home. And, oh, hey, every single person that Luffy met along his travels is coming to help.
Or maybe some will try and hinder to no effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Captain Kuro is like, after so many years, I will have my boom! Luffy just one-shots him.
I miss Kuro. Kuro is one of my favorite characters, and I feel like he could
so
have got...
conniving and such a great...
If he ate a devil fruit and then entered the Grand Line after Luffy, like that would have been a cool follow-up.
Exactly, especially with more improved abilities and such. Hell, just have a cat fruit model. I can't speak. Like the panther fruit or something like that. And I'd go with the whole super speed thing and clawing at him.
And I mean, like we've seen a lot of Logia users be like trumped as the best or the most powerful, but Luffy proves that Paramecia and some of the other fruits can be just as powerful.
It's not the fruit; it's how you use it.
Exactly, and he's smart enough to be able to utilize a fruit properly, whereas some people just they eat the fruit, they don't understand how it works. And
yeah. I mean,
it leads to
Crocodile himself pretty much was the one who started explaining that it doesn't matter what fruit you have, you have to keep improving your abilities. And I guess Luffy took that to heart.
That's one of my favorite
encounter, he pulled out a new trick that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, I'm okay with the 4Kids dub, but instead of blood, he sweats. You know what? That's the one of the few edits that actually I can work with.
Yeah, I
he's
mean,
underground, he's fighting, he's very sweaty. Okay, it's stupid, but you know what? That's one explanation you could buy.
Yeah, that was probably one of the least bad edits. But then again...
Then we have the freaking hammer gun. I don't even know how it's supposed to work, and yet I wish Oda at one point would draw a character using that.
I just really don't like what they did to both Smoker and Crocodile, where their mouths are just perpetually open. They smoke cigars. I'm like, these people are high class. Like, they're really rich people. They can afford cigars. And you're just going to make them into jokes.
Okay,
and
Smoker, we could sort of... Okay, here's my thoughts. With Smoker, they at least kept the smoke in, so effects from his fruit. With Crocodile, let him have a cigar. He's the villain. Villains smoke. Hey, kids, do you want to be a villain? Smoke! Then get your butt kicked.
And Smoker was an antagonist. It wasn't like we weren't supposed to look up to him. But that's the thing. One Piece is not black and white. There are villains who turn out to be heroes in the end, and then later when we learn why Arlong was doing what he did in the first place, you're like, okay, people be racist.
I like the meth. I like the backing of his reasoning, but I don't like the method.
Yeah, it completely makes sense, but that's the thing. When they acquired One Piece, they didn't understand how complex morally and emotionally it was. It's not an anime for kids. I mean, granted, in Japan, anime is geared towards younger children, but the thing is, there's a lot of adult themes and ideas. And when I say adult, I don't mean just killing and maiming and it's complex
like
ideas.
Like one of the biggest things is that one character says, a child who's known nothing but war will have different ideals than someone who's known nothing but peace.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually a real moral philosophy, and it's something that's been explored a lot. Also, the Navy men, people look to them as heroes, but not all, and some of them are heroes.
They're like complex.
Smoker, yeah, he's a bit of an asshole, but a kid messes up his pants, you think, standard villain, he's just gonna kick her aside or get angry. He's like, I'm sorry, my pants ate up your ice cream. Here, try for a 3 scoop. He's just
like people like Aokuji, who are very uncertain if what they're doing is right, or Akainu, who's a complete asshole, but at the same time, he has his own sense of justice, and I don't believe in his sense of justice, but at the same time, he justifies his actions, and it makes sense why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, even Luffy and his gangs, they're not always morally good. Like, some of their actions can be considered gray. They're chaotic good at most.
Mm-hmm. Especially the fact that the way they leave Skypiea, like, we are kind of pirates, so we should probably steal the gold that they were going to give us anyway.
Exactly, which is pretty funny. Oh, and apparently a rubber band goes for so much money up there. He's just like, I have more. No, this one's good. He just wanted one. One rubber band. Man, I bet it would blow their mind if we showed them the rubber band ball. That would just blow their mind.
Oh, God. One Piece is just filled with so many moments and ideas and things that, I take a close look and analyze, because looking like Shushu, like these simple, small things affect you on a deep level. And when you get to bigger and even bigger moments, like when Vivi sees them off and they do the cross on their hand,
just showing that they are comrades and they will always be
One Piece is about big ideas. Small moments can be big, and small moments have power to them, and they utilize that to great effect. It's not just about one thing, and it's not afraid to change the status quo. I remember when the show used to be, people used to think that, we're going to go to the next Shichibukai and the next one and the next one. Well, 2 Shichibukai later, and then they're already trying to change up the status quo. And they're doing things differently, and they're not always the villains. And it's not a formulaic show after a while. It keeps itself fresh.
Although I bet I know what the ending is going to be like when they finally find the One Piece. They're going to go through all hell. They're going to find Goldie Rogers. There's like one treasure chest, and they're like, where's the treasure? They open it up. There's nothing in it except a note, and it says, here, look around you. The comrades who brought you here, or stuff like that. Friendship is the true treasure upon the Grand Line. And then Nami's like, what? We went all this way for nothing? And then Luffy turns over the back. P.S. If you wish to find my treasure, follow these directions. And it's like, well, guess we got a new adventure. And it's like, here we go again.
What I would like, and I know some people don't agree with me. I've talked to some of my friends about this. I think it would be really, really cool if the One Piece was the hat that Luffy brings along with him. Because it's implied that it's Goldie Rogers' hat. It's not officially confirmed. I mean, I know it was Shanks before his, but what if, Gold Rogers' treasure was the hat that he brought through his entire adventures, and that was Luffy's treasure as well?
That would also work. It's either the power of friendship, the hat, or it's like a coin that was minted by the entire crew, representation.
Or it's the hidden history that people are getting, that the history that everyone wants to cover up is the One Piece.
That could work. There's plenty of interpretations. That, or they could just play it straight and it really is a mountain of gold.
That would be really, really cool. It all depends. The thing is, we don't know enough about Gold Roger. We don't know enough about Silver's Raleigh. We don't know enough to not know.
But we know about Oda and some of his themes. That's who we do know. That's why I went with the joke would be, it's about friendship, and then turn the back, if you want my treasure, you have something emotional, then you have a joke. And, they got their cake and they get to eat it too.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, they do utilize that a lot. There are some things in One Piece that will never change. There will always be the post-battle party where Luffy will eat more than 10 times his weight in food.
Probably 20 at this point.
There will always be some sort of power-up or some sort of moment in an arc where they learn some new ability. There will always be
the man who didn't believe him, realizing that, or the guy who got changed because of them helping.
Mm-hmm. And you always know that Luffy will stick to his ideals. The people in One Piece don't change all that much. Probably the most dynamic is Usopp and how he grew from the beginning. But I think that the moral of One Piece is that these characters change character-wise because they don't really need to. They are the people that they need to be to get this done.
That and stick by your friends.
Mm-hmm. I've heard some criticisms of character in One Piece and how they don't really change, but I never really saw that as a problem, mostly because I like who they are, and when they do encounter something that they're generally wrong about, they change. For example, the most powerful moment when Luffy loses his entire crew and he goes down to his knees and he bawls his eyes out. What does he do? He immediately tries to save the person closest to him that he thinks he's able to save.
Yeah.
He tries to learn from that mistake. And then he realizes, well, I don't have the power. Let's take some time, get the power, get my crew back together, and let's never have this happen again. And he learns.
I mean, he pretty much got one up. He tried, he failed, he cried, and then realized, I need to get better.
Mm-hmm.
So all we need is a Rocky training montage. By the way, was there ever filler of them, on each of the islands? Like, I know there were in the manga, they showed bits and bits of their training, or at least them getting it. But was there actually ever filler episodes of them doing the training?
From what I gather, and a lot of my One Piece knowledge comes from the manga, because that's what I read the most of for the longest time. I have watched as much as I can, and I do own like the first collection or whatever, but from what I can gather, they did have at least 5 to 10 episodes in between setting everything up. I don't think they were really filler, but they embellished upon what was established in the manga.
Although, here's something I wonder. If 4 Kids got to Impel Down, what kind of voice would they give our favorite queen? In a perfect world, if I were in charge of all the dubbing, I would get Tim Curry to voice him.
Honestly, Tim Curry would be perfect for Ivankov, and because... I think it would be great. I'm actually not sure what Funimation chose to use for a lot of these voices. I haven't seen a lot of the Funimation dub, and while I did do one video, explaining my thoughts about it, and I had initially wanted to do more of those, but the dub isn't what I know. The dub isn't what I really grew up with, and when I try to
if you go with the original Japanese, no mistranslations outside of fan subs.
Yeah, I try to get the best fan subs I can, and I try to interpret them for the people watching, because, I mean, honestly, the fan subs that I have aren't 100% perfect. I know that.
But going with this works a little better then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone's blaming you for going with it.
Mm-hmm. But I later, I fully support. I saw the scene where, first, I love Brooke's voice. And the scene where
yes. I was always wondering who would be perfect for Brooke, because he's supposed to be a singing skeleton, and finally Luffy gets a musician after so many years.
And they did a brilliant job of being sake in English. Like, I saw it, and I'm just like, wow. It's not quite as emotional in the last part, because in the Japanese, when he says, like, solo and trio, and, like, you can feel the emotion coming from his voice. I don't feel quite as much in the English, but everything else, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
For a skeleton, for a big skeleton guy, you'd think it'd be a lot more gloomy. I like how he's playing against the type.
45 degrees.
60 degrees. 90 degrees. 180. 180.
He probably has the most sad backstory ever, considering
and yet
that
he is probably the most cheerful.
Well, and probably insane. I mean,
yeah, after being alone at sea.
He dies. The only one piece person can hide in their backstory, and then come back as a skeleton, and spent years and years and years with the dead bodies of his former crewmates just drifting at sea, unable to do anything because he can walk on water, but it's only for so long.
And then he loses his shadow, and he can't go out in sunlight, so it's even more depressing.
For the longest time, everything that he ever stood for, knew, and cared about is destroyed, including his life, which it took him...
The only thing that remains is the last voice literally inside his head, and probably the only thing that kept him sane is the hope that he finds his still living friend and give him the last song, which, by the way, great connection.
I didn't expect that at first, but when we got to that chapter, I'm like, you are genius, Oda. He sets things up so early on. From the
markings
chapter
of our favorite octopi's forehead to character abilities to the idea of hockey.
Hockey was technically episode 4, but the first ever chapter of the manga. He knew from the very beginning that he was going to include this ability. Maybe not what it was going to do, but something that doesn't come into play for 500 chapters down the line. He knew what it was.
Yeah, it's less a Chekhov's gun and more of an Oda's gun at this point.
It's at this point it's really hard to say much more than I love One Piece. There's so much that I could go on for hours about One Piece.
How about we move on? Yeah, I think maybe the people watching are getting annoyed. Why did you choose the name Zenith Will Reviews anyway?
Well, when I was young, I actually used to be a writer. I was an aspiring writer, and starting from high school, because my cousin was a freelance writer and self-published a lot, and I wanted to see what I could do with that. I thought that was going to be my career for a long time. So from high school, I started developing my writing and my talent for writing, and one of the main characters that I came up with, a villain, I wanted him to have a menacing sounding name. And, I was thinking of something like, it has to start with like a Z, like something really cool sounding.
Like Lord Zed.
Yeah, like Lord Zed. I originally came up with Zephyr, probably from Pokemon at the time. And I thought it sounded cool, but my friend was like, but that doesn't have a meaning. And I'm just like, you're right. And so he came up with Zenith, because it's the pinnacle of the night sky, like the pinnacle, the top. And so that was going to be the villain of the story. All throughout college, I was writing it. And I finished it, rough draft. I wasn't very satisfied with it, but the name stuck, and I've been using it for everything ever since.
Hey, it works. I mean, for me, I use Tenkage because it's the kanji of ten, and then Kage for heaven, and then Kage for shadow. Heaven, shadow, or as I like to interpret it, dark and light, because I'm both sane and insane, thanks to my autism.
That works. I mean, I just kind of went with it. When I started making videos, I'm just like, okay, well, it works.
It's memorable.
People seem to notice it. So, I mean, 5 years later, and people still come up to me, hey, Zenith, like, no one uses my real name, and I'm actually really happy about that.
Yeah, I just use... Bren is my real name. It's just that it's one of those very memorable names. It's short, easy to remember, and people always get it wrong. Whenever I say, my name's Bren. Brent? Bren. Brendan? Bren. B-R-E-N.
Hansel?
I don't even get the joke. I remember that from Looney Tunes, and I still don't get the joke.
Because Hansel is a weird name.
It is, isn't it? When you get down to it. I wonder if if there's any kids in the next generation who's going to be named Hansel.
Well, they have worse names.
Yeah. Like Judas Traveler.
Or
Wait,
Precious.
no, that was just a lame character, though it is a pretty awesome name. Awesome McCool name.
Badass McPower Fist.
Or, if you want badass, Monkey D. Luffy. You won't be laughing after he punches you!
And for the longest time, I didn't know that Monkey was his surname because of the way they translated in English.
Yeah.
Like, Monkey is his last name. And they... So, yeah. When they actually get around to saying, like, the family names, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, even, I learned about Japanese naming conventions by watching anime.
I actually have a cousin who, the same person who was a freelance writer, moved over to Japan, lived there, taught English for the longest time. Most of what I know is from him. Took a year of Japanese in college. I still know the basics. I'm still really rusty, but every now and again I try to incorporate a little bit Japanese knowledge into what I do because I do have firsthand connections. He married a Japanese woman over there, came back to America, went back and forth for a little bit, and then settled down over here with his two kids. So, I mean, I know a lot about the culture and the reality of living there because it's a lot different than people think.
Yeah. For starters, Godzilla attacks only happen once a month.
Only every so often,
That and whenever you get like superpowered beings attacking, you just leave it to the teenagers. They know what they're doing. All joking aside, yeah, I always wanted to visit Japan.
It's a place that I really need to go to someday.
I want to see like, some of the
saving
Shinto
up.
shrines and such.
Yeah,
That and go to Nara and feed a deer.
It's one of my dreams to go over there, but the best part is that where I live right now, I've actually had authentic ramen and authentic Japanese food. If you go to some like big city places like Toto's Ramen, that is legit, like Japanese staffed Japanese food. Like these are people who came over and they established themselves there, and you can find some really good places if you look. In fact, after this interview, I want to go out for Japanese food, so I'm excited to go eat now.
Reward yourself with some good old ramen. By the way, how about the Final Fantasy retrospective? What made you want to do that? I mean, you have the One Piece one. Why do you need to be famous for two things?
Well, I don't need to be famous at all, but I'm really surprised at how well this took off. First of all, I really want to thank a lot of people for making that happen. Rue from Clan of the Grey Wolf, I showed it to him. I met him at Too Many Games.
Wow.
I said, I contributed a couple times to Retroware, and they feature their stuff on my page every single time I post. I'm like, I must be doing something wrong.
Wow, really? That's
Right,
so cool. I gotta see if I can get Rue for the Clan of the Grey Wolf on here. I like his stuff.
He does a great job. He was really nice. I talked to him for a long time at Too Many Games, and I said, I've been working on this for 2 years, and I'm gonna submit it to Retroware. He's like, yes, submit it. Just do it. A few weeks later, I said, I talked to you about this, and it's done. And not only did he featured it, but he promoted it. Like I talked to him at Con Bravo afterwards. We had dinner, and we chatted for a while with him, me and Nash, and Shane from Re-Res, and we were just hanging out. And he said, "Dude, thank you for doing that." I'm like, "Thank you." But back to your original question, I love Final Fantasy. If there was ever a game that I really wanted to talk about on my show, I wanted to talk about Final Fantasy. And after I did Sonic, I'm like, what can I do a little bit more? I am going to eventually get to more Sonic games and more like stuff like that, but I'm just like, what's really, really popular, but what do I not know enough about, but know enough to talk about it? I have every single Final Fantasy game in the main series. I grew up with it, and I wanted to learn more about the world of Final Fantasy. I wanted to learn more about how it was created, and as I started to play through the game again and started to learn about the behind the scenes stuff, I'm like, I have to do more of this. And it blew up into something extremely huge. I spent a month rough editing that entire video, and then I took a break and went down to New Jersey and saw my friends, and then I came home, and it took me about 2 weeks to finish that. That was a labor of love. That was a project that I could
definitely see that.
I wanted to put in as many people as I could in that, and there were a couple people who unfortunately could not be in it. Petros from My Life as a Video Game did agree to be in it, but he was busy at the time working on his new show. And I had asked Shane Rerez about it, and he said, like, I'd like to do some work with you, but I don't know enough about Final Fantasy to really comment on it. And, you know, I respect that. So I was just like, you know, anyone who I can get involved in this. I didn't want it to just be me talking, because it was so massive a thing that I don't know all the stuff. I'm not a music reviewer, and there's a lot of major musical stuff about Final Fantasy. I wanted to get those people involved because at the end of the day, I'm just a guy talking about something I love, and I could be wrong about a lot of things. I had a lot of people proofread that for me and just look it over and just make sure I knew what I was talking about. And I mean, while a lot of it is stuff that I know, and a lot of it is, you know, personal experiences, like the stuff about D&D, it was more for me a project that I wanted to get everyone I could involved in, and it panned out beautifully. I'm really glad that a lot of people really love it. And I can't wait for the next part.
Oh yeah, I can't wait either. Though in my opinion of Final Fantasy 2, the mechanics were ahead of their time, but just not implemented very well.
It is Skyrim before Skyrim could be Skyrim.
Exactly.
The technology did not allow for that kind of game. And I think people fail to realize how revolutionary it was. Nothing like that had been done. Nothing had been attempted. And ultimately, yes, it was problematic, but much like Final Fantasy 1, it went out there, it took a risk. It decided that it didn't want to do anything like its predecessor.
Yeah,
for
story, different characters to join you, and
it actually had a story and set characters instead of the system.
And that annoying talking backwards ass broom.
Mm-hmm.
That and the war machines.
Oh
God! It's just like playing D&D. You're in a first level dungeon, and somewhere on the random encounter table is a freaking dragon.
If you think that's bad, you should try playing through the secret dungeon that they put into the PSP version of Final Fantasy 1. The Labyrinth of Time is one of the worst things I've ever played in my life. It is horrible. It is hard. And I've done some challenges. Like I challenged myself with games, but as I was writing the script for like the additional content in Soul of Chaos, I couldn't get through it. And I'm going to say that when I get to that video eventually, but there's things in Final Fantasy games that even I am not capable of doing. And finishing the Labyrinth of Time is not something I'm willing to do. But also in terms of hidden bosses, if you try facing Final Fantasy 13 or Final Fantasy 13-2's secret bosses, boy.
Didn't really get that far in Final Fantasy 13. It really turned me off, especially Hope. Especially how it gets weird when I'm mopey, and then he goes into combat. That just feels kind of off.
It's a problematic game. Final Fantasy 13, there's a lot that I did like about it, but
like
it's a chore. It's a chore to get through, though, and I played through it twice.
Wow.
And I 100%ed that game, including in 13 too. So I do have the patience for that.
Wow. I'm impressed.
The third time, though, because I'm going to have to play it again if I ever want to cover it.
Yeah, it's going to be... So what's your favorite Final Fantasy game?
My favorite is Final Fantasy IX. That has my favorite characters. It was the first one I played. It has some of my favorite elements, like the existential crisis of most of the characters. I think Zidane is one of the best protagonists in the series. Not to mention that it's an homage to every single Final Fantasy that came before it, including Garland, who is one of the major villains.
And he will knock you all down. I love that when they lampooned that in 8-bit theater. That was just glorious.
Like that's one of those famous mistranslations.
And I know, and I read in your thing because the Japanese word can mean multiple things, and they sort of mistranslated it. I mean, they could have easily just translated to "I, Garland, will destroy you." But
I think
dude,
the
just
original
knock you
was
down.
like
It's just so bad, it's good.
I think the original is crush, which is much more menacing.
I will.
But at the same time, the translation is so hilarious that I love it.
And I'm glad they keep it in just because it's so bad, it's good.
The funny thing is that when I mentioned that, there was one person in the comments, and I don't make a habit of reading comments unless like people are generally trying to help me improve, but there was one comment where a guy was just trying to denounce the entire thing, like, "Oh, that's not a mistranslation." I'm like, "Do you speak English?" I don't understand how that makes sense.
That's the thing about Japanese wording. The characters can mean multiple things.
And I'm pretty sure that if it was an intentional thing to say, that the argument was that the original Japanese can mean many different things, and they said it a certain way so that kids could understand it in Japan, which would make sense. Only the fact is this is a translation in English where people will not only not get the joke, but also see it as awkward as hell. And the translators probably did not understand that Kechirasu means to kick.
And plus,
or to knock
there's
down.
Also the idea, well, they intentionally did it. There was no way they could have predicted that it would have become a meme. There is no way they would have predicted that.
It's like you spoony barred. Like, it's one of those phrases that technically spoony is a real word.
Yeah.
Technically, yes, but people don't often say it. And even more so for knock you all down. How many times do you go down the street where people say, "I will knock you down today"? It doesn't happen.
That sounds like something that the crazy bum who's also asking for 200 Abraham Lincoln hats would say.
It's just baffling. So again, I didn't take that comment to heart, but like I said, I did a lot of research when doing that video. That took I initially planned it 2 years before the release. I thought I was going to do a vlog series about all the games, and I sat down, I started recording, and I realized this isn't good. It's not good enough. So I sat down and I played through the game again, and I started scripting, and I'm like, this is how I need to do it, and this is how it needs to focus. And then after I finished the script, I played through the game a third time, and just to make sure that everything was correct. And I mean, like I said, I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of people, but now I think I'm ready to move forward to first Soul of Chaos, which is not going to be quite as long. It's basically talking about the 4 bonus dungeons and the Labyrinth of Time that were later included in other games. It's going to address some of the comments on the original video, which did make legitimate not criticism, but legitimate arguments about stuff that I might not have understood in the game, like the whole time loop thing. And there were some very good arguments about how the time loop is supposed to work.
Yeah, and I guess that I can't blame anyone for... I mean, when it comes to time travel stories, it can get pretty confusing at times. I can't wait to see what is explained. Still, it would have been really good if the final boss also said, "I will knock you all down," in reference to the original Garland. I mean, how awesome would that be? I mean, you got an evil knight who says it, and then you have basically Satan saying, "I will knock you all down." Come on, in a remake they have to do that.
That would be a lot of fun. But yeah, there were some good arguments. I still don't completely understand it, but there are some things that I did not mention that do, or I did not notice at first that I will bring up. And Yeah, when I make a mistake, I will acknowledge that my mistake is there, and I want people to know, because my videos are there to inform as much as entertain. Um, but also I want to talk about like the extra dungeons, the bosses, because a lot of them are based on future Final Fantasy games. Um,
Will you talk about? Well, here's a question: in the Final Fantasy perspective, I presume you're going to do the spin-offs, but will you also talk about the anime?
there's an anime?
Well, a couple animes, like there's like one Final Fantasy, and then there's also the Spirit Within.
I'm going to have to look into that because initially when I thought about doing all of this, I was just doing the main games, the side games, and some of the games that are like Final Fantasy. For example, Xenogears, which is another one that I'm doing major, was originally supposed to be Final Fantasy VII. So
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
It kind of ties in like that. So
Huh, I did not know that, actually. Also, when it comes to my favorite games, I like Final Fantasy VIII. That was actually my first Final Fantasy, and my god, that giant mechanical spider scared the hell out of me. Mostly because
I
my
never
brother
really got
failed
into-
to mention that you're supposed to run away from it the first time. So when I brought it down, I didn't know what to do, and then it comes back up, I'm like, what do I do? What do I do?
I never really got big into Final Fantasy VIII, but I haven't played much of it, so my initial impressions weren't too great because it was a little bit more open than I was used to, but that was when I was young, so I can't really comment on it yet. But
And I'd say a lot of the arguments about the mechanics being bad, the whole junctioning. I like the idea of junctioning, again, but like Final Fantasy 2, not implemented as well.
it was complex, and you needed to read walls of text to understand it. Um, I haven't played much of it though, so I mean, it could
Might be
be
good
really,
to go
really
back.
great.
You might like it, you might hate it. Hey,
I'm not going to
sure
say
thing.
one way or another at this point, but what I will say is, if I have time, I'll cover some of the other stuff. I'm going to cover Bravely Default, of course, because it is technically a Final Fantasy game without the name.
Okay. How about some of the Chocobo games?
Possible. I'd have to track them down. Some of these games have been very hard for me to track down, and one of the reasons why I didn't show a Final Fantasy 1 cart in that review, I don't own it. That's expensive.
Yeah. Wait. NES or Game Boy?
NES.
Okay,
'cause
just checking.
I don't want to own the Game Boy version. I hear it's an okay port, but it's not really my thing. When I eventually do track down a copy of the cart, I will definitely showcase it or whatever.
I don't think I don't think anyone would blame me for emulating the NES games, because some NES games are really hard to find and are way too expensive. SNES, I think at that point some people might get a little pissy about.
For me, I have a lot of the remakes. I have the anniversary versions of 1 and 2, but I also do have the PSN version of Final Fantasy Origins. So I do have that.
And you can get a lot of the Final Fantasies now on Steam, including they just released 9, which
Yes.
I've got to play, because I've played just about every Final Fantasy. It may not beaten all of them, but 9 is the only one I've never actually played. Well, that and the MMOs, but I'm not a big fan of MMOs.
I think 14 is criminally underrated, but that's only because A Realm Reborn fixed everything that was a problem in the original.
Yeah.
That was not a good release, but at the same but yeah, there's so much to cover. If I have time, maybe in between games, for example, in between Xenogears, I'm gonna cover like something shorter because these projects sometimes get a little bit bigger than I want them
Yeah,
to.
like the end, like we are already. It took like you an hour and a half to go through the first one, and that was an NES game.
That plot
Once
was
you get
very
to like
easy.
7, you're gonna have to section it into like 8 30-minute videos.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to have to figure out. Although, it's funny because a lot of my audience members have said, and I put a poll to this, that they would rather have one video than have it in parts. And I found that a lot more people watch it when it's one video than when it's in parts. So I mean, it does work for a lot of people.
Well, at least for something that's infotainment like this.
Yes, it all depends. I'm not here to make more money off of it for multiple parts. I don't make any money off of this, but it's really really fun to do. And if you like it more in one video that's there, I could section it off if need be. But that'll come in the future when I eventually get to it. Other things I have planned though. Xenogears is going to be the start of a PlayStation marathon for the retrospective lineup. Retrospectives starting with Xenogears. I am also going to cover Crash Bandicoot.
Ooh.
Right afterwards, I'm going to cover Vagrant Story, Chrono Cross, and Trigger. And I'm going to cover Lunar Silver Star Story. And if I can track down the sequel, Eternal Blue, I'm going to do that as well. But those are the bigger games. In between, I'm going to cover stuff that are simple, like Motocross. I have very old PS1 game version of that. I have Spyro, stuff that I grew up, stuff that is very, very short and easy to produce. Again, it'll be the same style of in-depth...
Hold on. I have a... there's someone at my door. We're going to have to cut this short for one moment. So, could you wait a moment? And with the power of jump cut, and hours later, we're back!
Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
So, before we left, I was talking about the things that are coming up next on my show. There are a couple big things I have planned. For example, after I do my Xenogears retrospective, I have a few plans for continuing on with like a big PlayStation 1 look back. In between some of the major games, I'm going to be doing like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and some of the smaller, easier to produce games.
Ooh,
but
how
also
about Tomba?
Tomba is another one that I grew up with Tomba, and I think that'll be a great one.
I have a PlayStation 3. I should download that.
There's a lot of good PS1 classics to talk about. I mean, obviously there's ones that I grew up with, like Spyro and stuff like that. But a lot of what I want to do with retrospectives is touch upon games that fans have requested that I play. And why I started Xenogears was I had a panel back at Con Bravo last year, and during that panel, somebody asked my thoughts on the game, and I'm like, I'm sorry I haven't played that game. And my friend Magic Steve was just like, okay, well, you know what? I have the game. I'm going to send it to you. And later he sold the game to me, so that kind of spawned this whole idea. So I've been mulling Xenogears over for a while, and I will touch upon the later like Xeno games and Xenosaga. But for right now, I want to focus more on PlayStation 1. After Xenogears, do a little bit of Crash Bandicoot, and then I'm going to go over to Lunar, the Silver Star Story, because I hear really good things about it. I haven't played it, but I do own it now. Probably the most expensive game I've ever bought.
Nice.
And yeah, it's like $130. $120.
Gaming is such an expensive hobby, especially if you're the kind of guy who has to who reviews the old classic. How does Rue afford all some of those games boxed? Seriously,
it's really hard. But speaking of which,
ooh, yeah, show us your collection.
This is Lunar. It's the collector's complete edition.
Oh,
and I got this over in Salem. It's really nice.
That is pretty.
This is
that's
almost
one game
mint
I really want to get
Xenogears.
to.
For later down the line, I got
like that.
Yeah,
Game Art.
It used to be so.
Yeah.
It used to be so, like a selling point of the game. Now it's just static stuff, except for perhaps this.
Now that's pretty.
Collector's edition of Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I'm going to get to that eventually, but that,
that's a game
Xenogears has taken a lot of my time.
There's a lot of games I really want to play. I want to play Yokai Watch.
Yokai Watch I do have. There's a lot of games just sitting in my shelf.
For me, it's my Steam Workshop.
Games that I bought for this PlayStation 1 marathon, though, in addition to Lunar, I bought Vagrant Story, Chrono Trigger. Well, I bought Chrono Cross. I already owned one version of Chrono Trigger, but I also have the PlayStation version as well. So
I have the DS version.
I have that as well. So I haven't played the original Chrono Trigger, like the NES version.
Or S.
But I have like the S. That's right. It was Super Nintendo. So I don't have that version of the game. I do have the PS1 and I do have the DS, which was a great remake. I really enjoyed that remake.
Especially since they added those anime cutscenes by good old Akira Toriyama. God, I love his artwork. Although
he did the art for the original game too, so
yeah, he does the original game as well as the Dragon Quest series. Which, by the way, if you ever finish hypothetically the Final Fantasy, would you ever do a Dragon Quest retrospective?
Funny you mentioned that. Sitting behind me is a copy of Dragon Warrior that I found sitting in a retro game store in Salem. That is my plan if I ever get some free time to touch upon Dragon Warrior and then its impact in... Well, Dragon Warrior is basically Dragon Quest, but it's just America being silly.
Because it was the rename and there was like I think there was issues with like... there was like another tabletop game with the same name and they had issues with the legal aid. And to be honest, Dragon Warrior sounds a little more awesome to us Americans than
I don't get... It all depends. Like Warrior, when I think Warrior, I think more Dungeons and Dragons. When I think Dragon Quest, I think more fantasy exploration. It's like the difference between, like, say, your Hunter of the Future and say Conan. There's a little bit difference, I would think. I also have Legend of Zelda 1 and Legend of Zelda 2 retro games, and behind me I have The Lion King for SNES. I have Goof Troop. These are all things that I do plan on covering in the future, along with, say, Sonic 2 and some of those other things.
Yeah.
But these are all things that I need to plan for.
So much to do.
So at At the moment, I'm just content with I have 3 things officially scripted.
Sorry,
and
you
then
kind of slowed down for a moment.
Fourth script I'm working on right now. I have 3 scripts already completed, and I have a 4th that I'm working on, which is Xenogears. I am currently editing the next history of One Piece, which is taking a while. I have been releasing screenshots to show my progress because it is happening.
I've seen on Facebook. And if any of Zenith fans are watching this, follow his Facebook. He's being earnest. This stuff does take time. I wish more people would understand that.
I still get people asking when the next history of One Piece is. And
as heartwarming
as heartwarming as it is, there are times where I really want to produce it as fast as you guys want me to make it. The problem is I do have to work full time. I do have a Patreon set up, and the more money I get there kind of does help out.
Not to mention
because if I could quit my job.
Not to mention it helps pay for some of these retro games you are going to review.
Yeah, it does help to pay for a lot of these games, but if I could quit my job right now and just edit full time, I would. Believe me, I would love to do that. But
the reality
I'm not that high profile.
Too bad reality has to creep in. I'm just imagining that reality monster from that Nostalgia Critic review. Yeah, I think it was Monster Squad. Yeah, from Monster Squad review.
Mm-hmm.
God.
But yeah, so currently editing the next history of One Piece. This will finish up the Buggy arc, and with Buggy arc done, I can focus on going into the OVA for it's the Gonzack OVA, because that actually takes place at that point in One Piece,
yeah,
right
are you also
after
gonna do the movies?
the Buggy arc.
You're gonna do the movies?
I am going to do the movies when they come up in the show. So in terms of the timeline, the first movie doesn't begin until after they get Usopp and their crew.
Okay.
So Kuro comes first.
Okay, so you will do the movies when they can come up in the story. Fair enough. It's always really helpful when the movies have a set timeline. Unlike
or
some of the
I
Dragon
can at
Ball
least
movies.
try to find a timeline. Well, the Dragon Ball movies for a while, they just didn't follow anything. At least One Piece kind of does. I've been looking online for the official time stamps. Sometimes it's hard because some of the One Piece movies are recreations of other arcs or Elseworld stories. There's an arc where they recreate the Drum Island arc, but in this movie, Brook is part of the crew, so Chopper is the last one they get.
Huh. That's kind of weird.
It is very weird, but at the same time, the animation is beautiful. I saw it at my friend's house, and for recreation, I mean, there was another movie that was a recreation of the Crocodile arc, just as the Crocodile arc, and it was okay, but it was shorter. You can't really tell the entire arc in a movie. I like the Drum Island one better.
Oh my god, what would have happened if Four Kids... I just realized, what would happen if Four Kids dubbed Brook? Oh god.
They would have gotten rid of a lot of those jokes, especially because he's the one talking about how he wants panties. So
I know.
They probably would have taken that out.
What does Skeleton do with it? He lost the one organ that you need! Like... Maybe that's how he keeps his humanity.
That's another tragedy, Brook.
Maybe that is how he keeps his humanity. The fact that he is lustful, he knows he has a soul, and he knows that he is alive.
He doesn't just have a soul, he is the Soul King.
Man, that was so awesome. But how the hell does his hair grow bigger?
He has strong roots.
But it doesn't change the fact that it can't grow. Then again, it's One Piece. We don't have to explain this insanity.
It probably has something to do with the fruit, I would imagine. Also, I mean, to be fair, hair and fingernails are the two things that grow after you die. So,
technically,
the rest of your body...
It's because it looks like they grow because, the skin shrinks during the decomposition. So it gives the illusion that it's growing, and even then it's like a few inches, possibly.
I still say it looks good with the afro.
Yeah, he does look better than with one. Although Frankie, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of miss his old design. I mean, yeah, he's a giant robot, but I kind of miss the old Frankie. Although Usopp, he got a good deal.
Well, after they made him fat, I still don't understand what the whole deal is with fat Usopp.
I think
why would you make Usopp fat?
This is a joke.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm working on all of that. I have plans for the next few arcs of One Piece set aside, and I have a few jokes that I've been meaning to do, but they're in the Crocodile arc, and because there are a couple things that I think of when I'm editing, and I'm just like, this would be so perfect in when Ace first shows up and stuff like that. Oh wait, that's so far in the future right now, but I do have things planned.
All right, why don't you tell you the joke now? I mean, I bet I don't know, in a year or so, when you actually make it, no one will remember it.
One of the things I have planned is when they have the crocodile arc and everyone's fighting inside the city, I'm gonna do a montage with all along the watchtower, and just have all the fighting and stuff be an AMV inside that. Another thing that I am planning is a One Punch Man AMV with One Piece visuals.
That totally makes sense, given... Yeah. Just don't... I think I know what punch you have to end it on. A certain asshole with a spring fruit. That is so cathartic just to see. He's just, like, jumping around like, you are so weak, and everybody's just, like, laughing. He couldn't have this many baddies. Boom! Just...
Well, I actually made that AMV before.
I know, but it's so
if you look...
satisfying.
It is satisfying.
That one punch. Just give me... Just
the punch that
mind.
The punch that this will probably end on is, in Fishman Island, not Fishman Island, on Shabandi, when the screen goes black and white.
That's even more cathartic.
That's gonna be the
just to see
next one.
That fat sack of crap. I mean,
yeah,
okay, I will give Oda this. When he makes a hateful character, yeah. I think all the other villains, they're nothing compared to the freaking nobles. Like,
yeah.
Can you really think of a villain who was worse?
Possibly. It's hard to really say because the nobles are very, very bad. Caesar Clown might be a close contender, or Doflamingo. Doflamingo, considering what he does near the end of his arc, and it's very hard to say. One Piece villains are so diverse in their type of villainy,
and some of them actually have some logic behind their villainy.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually look at it from their point of view. With these guys, they are so blind and so assholes.
Yeah.
And the fact...
They don't understand at all. They don't understand what they're doing is wrong.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so cathartic when Luffy just socks the guy in the face when he's just like, oh, you can't touch me, I have the power of the Navy. Yeah, this guy burned the Navy, the flag, and basically declared war on all the nations. You ain't got nothing.
That's another satisfying moment. Soge King burned that flag.
Oh, God. Just make an AMV of every satisfying moment from each arc. Like, first moment you have, Steam is acting weird. It's posting the Steam uninstalling Shadowrun. Because I have to make room for other games, but it's already uninstalled! Steam! Why are you posting that thing? It's so weird. Yeah, just put an AMV of, I don't know, maybe that night, the 1812 Elva Overture, just every great moment.
I can think of something. I'm planning on making one every so often, depending on my subscriber count. I made the 500 subscriber one. The next one is going to be around like 5,000 subscribers, and that's going to be the sequel to the History of Punches, which again, it's going to be One Punch Man with One Piece.
And I guess maybe the next one could be History of Usopp's Lies, and just put a montage of every one of the best lies that Usopp has ever done. I'd say my favorite has to, of course, be he has 10,000 soldiers behind him, and Luffy believes him. That makes me laugh.
The thing is, Usopp lies so often that would be kind of hard, but the thing I love about Usopp's lies, they always come true.
I know!
Have you ever noticed that?
I know!
Like,
isn't that weird? He met the giant goldfish!
He now has like an army of followers. He is God Usopp.
Usopp
has become what he wanted to be. I love it. I love it so much.
I know. It's so awesome. So is there anything you want to add before we wrap this all up?
I have a lot of stuff planned and a lot of stuff in the works. So, I mean, check out my content, youtube.com/Zenith will review.
Link
Look
in
out
the
for more
description, as
history of
always.
Link in the description. You can check out more history of One Piece. I have 4 arcs pretty much fully covered right now, with the Buggy arc just waiting on one more episode. I have 1 retrospective of Final Fantasy 1. It is probably my longest video to date, and you should really check that out. I love it.
That's what made me find you, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just noticed it in my, hey, YouTube's like, hey, why don't you watch this video, because you happen to watch Derek, the Happy Video Game Nerd's Mystic Quest review for the umpteenth time.
Wow. To be mentioned,
got lucky
in the
there.
same feed as Happy Video Game Nerd. That's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, man, that would be awesome if you could do something with him. There's the question. If you could do a crossover with any YouTuber or internet celebrity, who would you want?
Personally, some call me Johnny. I love his work. I really do. I have been wanting to meet him for a long time. I didn't get to see him last time at Too Many Games. The fact that he has, he started just doing this for fun and he made a career out of it. He quit his job for his fans. Like, I really respect the guy. But yeah, check out my stuff. I have a bunch of video game retrospectives, these in-depth analysis. I go into pretty much every single aspect, history, behind-the-scenes information, anything I can find, and then I give you my personal take on it. A lot of these games are games that I grew up with, and I always have a story to tell. So,
all right.
With that said, I am Zenith Rule.
And I'm Brent Tenkage, and we will see you later. Bye!